Today I'm going to talk about Solo: A Star Wars Story, the new Star Wars movie that just came out. This being Star Wars and this being the internet, there are some strong opinions on this. And me being a Star Wars fan, I also have strong opinions, but I'm going to try and thread a middle ground here. Hopefully this won't get too nuanced. But I hated the idea of a Han Solo prequel for all the usual reasons that everybody hated this when it got announced. First of all, anybody other than Harrison Ford playing Han Solo is blasphemy. Like, the whole character is just created around the charisma of Harrison Ford. Secondly, prequels suck. I mean, there's no interesting stories to be told. If there was something interesting, it would have been alluded to already in the dialogue that this character had an interesting past or something. Or so you would think. Most of the time what prequels do is they just kind of land you where you thought the character was going to be at anyways. They're boring. At their worst, they kind of mess up established continuity, and most of them, even the best prequels, kind of tend to kind of mess up continuity a little bit, because you can't help it. If you're telling this whole story that took place before the main story, you're bound to kind of change some things about the character. And then the other reason why I and everyone else hated this idea was it was just so brain dead, lazy, right? So Disney gets the rights to Star Wars, and they announced that they're going to do a new Star Wars film every year. And everyone was like, fantastic. Take our money. We will go and see a new Star Wars film every year. And then they announced that they're going to do kind of one movie in the Star Wars trilogy, like the canon. I guess it's all canon, but like one in the ongoing story, and then one kind of in the expanded universe. And I thought, oh, that could work. It's a whole universe after all. You could have all these new stories and new people and new things to explore. And then they announced, we're going to do a backstory to how they stole the Death Star plans. And we're going to do a backstory to Han Solo. And we're going to do a backstory to Boba Fett. And we're going to do a backstory to Obi-Wan. And that's all the new Star Wars movies we're getting. It's just backstories to characters you already knew. And that's the only idea they've got. I mean, aside from this new trilogy. And I do like what they're doing with this new trilogy, but just the idea of just give us something new and don't keep going backwards in time. Go forwards in time. Okay, so hated the idea of it. But this is where it gets a little bit nuanced. I didn't actually want this movie to fail. I hated the idea of it, but once it was announced and once it was coming out, I wanted it to be good. Like, I didn't want them to screw this up any more than they had to. I mean, I knew they had to get another actor playing Harrison Ford's character and stuff like that, but I wanted it to be as good as it could be. So I wasn't one of those people hoping for it to be for it to fail. I was hoping that they would pull this off, even though I hated the idea of it. Because, now that it's out there and it's in the world, this is part of Star Wars now. This is part of the canon, this is part of the story. And I didn't want it to screw it up. I wanted it to be good because I'm a fan. So, I want this stuff to be good. So, it's a bit of nuance there, huh? Hopefully I'm getting this across. Hated the idea of it, but wanted it to be good, even though I hated the idea of it. So I saw the movie and I really liked it. I really enjoyed it. Even though I have all those issues I just mentioned beforehand. I think when you see a movie, to a certain extent, you've got to kind of judge it based on how well it carried out its premise. you can't judge its premise, right? So you can't go to like a World War II movie and be like, I hated it because I hate all war movies, right? You've got to kind of get past the idea that you would have made a different movie and say, okay, this is the movie they set out to make. How well did they make it? So with that in mind, I'm going to kind of give the general premise of this movie a pass. I mean, I've already said my piece about it. But I'm going to say, okay, we're living in a world where this movie exists and where this is the premise. How well did they do at carrying it out? Fantastic. They did a fantastic job of carrying this out. I mean, this was much better than anything I thought I would see. This was just a really great movie. It starts off right with a bang. Like there's an exciting scene right from the beginning. And then, for my money, the momentum just keeps going for that whole movie. Now, I say for my money because I've read contrary opinions. I know that there are a lot of people who think that the movie slows down in the middle. I didn't think so. I think it just kind of went from one exciting scene to the next, pretty much just for the whole of the movie. Yeah, I was excited the whole time I was watching it. And that guy, I forget his name, but that guy they got to do Han Solo, yeah, he works. You know, like, I mean, obviously, okay, well, here we come back to the premise again. You know, if I was in control of the universe, there would be a law that says no one other than Harrison Ford can ever play Han Solo because, you know, Harrison Ford is Han Solo. But we've already crossed this bridge, right? We're living in a world where this movie exists. And, yeah, he did the best job, I think, that could be expected of it. He's got kind of that cocky attitude down. He's got that swagger down. He's younger, obviously, but, you know, that's the whole point of the prequel. I thought he did really good. And Donald Glover was amazing. Of course, no surprises there. Everyone, you know, when it was announced that Donald Glover would be playing Lando, I think everyone was already expecting great things about it. But yeah, Donald Glover is amazing as Lando. The other characters were all really interesting, and almost all. I didn't like L3. Get into that later, maybe if I have time. Now this is one of those things everyone picks on. There were a couple of moments where they just did things that were stupid because they were so obvious. The whole part of where Han Solo gets his name, right? Like, what's your last name? Well, I don't have a last name. Who are your people? I don't have a people. Okay, you'll be Han Solo. Or when Chewbacca gives his name and Han says, well, I'm not calling you that, that's too long. Or just kind of all the other things that were just so obvious and such low-hanging fruit that you were kind of hoping that the screenwriters wouldn't actually do these things that were so obvious, and then they went ahead and did them anyways. That to me was a minor irritant. It didn't really bug me the way it bugs some other people. And, you know, to be perfectly honest, I kind of expected this all along. I mean, once this movie starts, and this is kind of the ride you're on where you're figuring out how Han became Han and all these things kind of came together, then you, to a certain extent, you kind of expect it. So, yeah, when Han met Chewie for the first time and there was that cheesy dialogue about Chewie's name being too long, I just kind of expected it at this point. It didn't really bug me that much. Yeah, what else about this movie? Sorry, this is the danger of doing these unscripted. I lose my train of thought as I'm talking. Let me jump back a little bit and say some other things I really liked about this movie. In my opinion, I think the most interesting thing about Star Wars... Sorry, let me start this again. The least interesting thing about Star Wars has always been the Jedi Knights and the Force. It's just kind of too strange, and it's not clearly defined, and it's inconsistent. What the Force can do changes from movie to movie, and the whole light side, dark side thing is just boring. It doesn't allow for complexity. So I have this theory that the original Star Wars became a huge hit in spite of this, not because of this. It was all the other things in that movie that made it a huge success. You know, like the Flash Gordon and the space western and kind of the, you know, the space pirate and the space smuggler and kind of the Nazis in space and kind of all those other elements which made it a huge success. And I think each movie since then has made the mistake of kind of doubling down on the Force mythology, which I think actually is the least interesting part of the whole thing. Other people may disagree, and that's fine. I know there's a lot of people who love Jedis and Forces and stuff like that. But what's beautiful about this Solo movie is there's no Force, no Jedis. Well, it's in there a little bit, it's hinted at, but it's all kind of off to the side. This is just, you know, for people who think that Star Wars works best as a space western, this is just a beautiful space western. It's just got all the kind of bravado and settings and stuff like that, and you know, the great train robbery and everything. Just a great Star Wars as a space western, I think. Yeah, what else did I like? Well, I'll tell you what. Let me talk about one thing I didn't like. Sorry, I know this is disorganized. I'm jumping all over the place here. Sorry. But something I didn't like was the character of L3, who I thought was annoying. And also, I'm not sure that whole thing was a good idea. So L3 was going on this big thing about equal rights for droids. Now, the whole thing about droids, they've always been problematic in the Star Wars universe. They, you know, C-3PO, of course, is the one we know the best. He's got thoughts and feelings, and he's got this huge desire for self-preservation. You know, he's sentient. He's essentially got a human brain. Granted, a very kind of neurotic personality, kind of worrywart type human brain. But kind of all the intelligence and agency and desire for self-preservation that you would attribute to a human. But in spite of that, throughout the Star Wars movies, these droids are always kind of treated like slave labor or second-class citizens. And it's not played as a social problem. It's kind of either ignored or it's kind of played up as a joke. I think the prequel movies did this a lot. Some of the other Star Wars movies did this to a certain degree. Like seeing a droid destroyed in a comical fashion was always kind of comical relief. They even did this in the Solo movie, right? So you had that droid running out saying, "Stop, this is an unauthorized area," and then he just gets rammed by the next car behind him. And then he's got the head is just kind of lying on the street, kind of finishing the sentence. And that's meant to be played for laughs. That's kind of the way the filmmakers are framing this, as they are telling the audience, you don't need to feel any sorrow that this being got destroyed. This is here for comic relief, because after all, it's just a droid and it doesn't matter anyways. And I don't even really mean that as a criticism. If it sounds like I'm getting too sanctimonious here, I'll go along with that in the audience. Like if you as a filmmaker tell me that these droids are not supposed to be regarded worthy of my empathy, fine. This is your universe. I'll just kind of try and push all the critical thinking to the back of my head. Which is why I don't think it's a good idea when they shine the spotlight on the equal rights for droids situation. I mean, that's not a program that the Star Wars universe is designed to explore. And if you open up that can of worms, it's just going to get it's just going to be such a mess to clean up. But if you are going to do it, then you have to do it seriously. If you say, okay, we're going to, droid equal rights is a problem in the Star Wars universe, let's tackle this problem, kind of clean it up. But to just make a joke out of it is, it's just, for one thing, it's not funny. So, it's not funny. The humor just falls flat there. But it's just, I don't know. Maybe this is the social justice warrior in me or something like that. I don't like it when the phrase equal rights is used as a punchline in a joke. Like, oh, isn't it, silly robots asking for equal rights. Because, like, there's a lot of screwed up situations in the world right now. There are people right now who are fighting for equal rights, and if you make the whole kind of crusade for equal rights into a punchline, I don't know. I realize as I'm saying that I'm coming off like the whiny liberal who's, complaining about political correctness in movies. So, if I'm too far out on this one, let me know. I'm open to criticism on this. Maybe I should relax and it's just a movie. But even if I'm being too sensitive, it just wasn't funny, was it? That whole thing with L3 and the equal rights for droids crusade, none of that was funny. So, that's my big argument against it. It just wasn't funny. The idea of L3 and Lando being in a romantic relationship as well, I don't think that worked for me. And I say that kind of knowing full well that that's the intent. The intent was that it was supposed to be kind of something you were like, what? Oh, that's strange. But I'm not sure it really fit in with this movie or with Lando's character. I don't know. It was just strange, wasn't it? There is kind of this ambiguity there, because L3 was saying Lando is definitely attracted to me. But we never got confirmation with Lando himself. Lando obviously had strong feelings for this droid and was affected by its death. But Lando himself never said he was sexually attracted to the droid. So the droid could have just been shooting off his mouth. I guess that's one interpretation. The other interpretation, though, is that this was what was actually going on, that there was actually kind of a sexual tension between Lando and the droid. And I know the droid has a woman's voice, but aside from that, there's very little, I could see it if it's one of these androids that looks like a woman. Then you could say, oh, okay, yeah. But like a droid that looks like a robot, but then I guess that's the whole point, is it science fiction, and I don't know. What did you think? Did that work for you? I'm not sure that worked for me. Okay, now that I've got that off my chest, I feel like I've been complaining about too many things, so let me go back to the things I really liked. That opening scene, I liked. It was a nice, exciting way to start off the movie. I thought that was classic Han Solo right from the beginning. The way he's kind of trying to sweet talk his way out of the situation, and the bravado, and the way he's kind of making it all up as he goes along. And then it just I thought the momentum kept really up to that kind of World War I scene, and then it get into the train robbery, and I thought that train robbery was such a great scene. It was like so much action in there. And then they kind of getting the crew together and meeting up with Lando, and I thought, Lando was such a great character in this, and the way Han Solo and Lando interacted off of each other was setting this up perfectly. And then the Kessel Run was exciting, and then that climax I really liked. I thought that was just kind of a satisfying payoff when kind of you realize what Han had been planning all along. The emotions of it carried me. Where you feel a little bit worried, like, oh no, what's going to happen? And then all of a sudden you see that Han had planned it all along and the tables turned. And call me a sucker, but I was sitting in the movie theater and I was like, yes. I mean, it got me. I really enjoyed that movie. And good news is it really didn't screw anything up too badly. I mean, Han's character, I think, there's nothing in here that's going to really kind of screw up any of what we know of Han's character from the next 3 movies. So it kind of fits seamlessly in, more or less, which is something that the George Lucas prequels didn't do. I mean, you remember the George Lucas prequels just kind of completely changed the way that the Force and Anakin's relation to Obi-Wan and all this stuff, all these kind of awkward loose ends dangling off because of the George Lucas prequels. And so a lot of people are like, myself included, prequels suck, you can't do prequels. But this is an example of a prequel done right. They actually do kind of pull it off. Now, they're kind of setting up for another movie, like another young Han Solo movie. And I've got to say, given how much I enjoyed this one, I think I'd be on board with that. The qualification is, though, it's always a dangerous thing. Because, it's one thing to do a movie, but a good movie is never guaranteed. So just because the first young Han Solo movie was good, does not mean that a second one will be good, lightning in a bottle and all that stuff. So I'm a little bit hesitant to kind of put my support behind it. Not that what I have to say matters anyways, really. But, just on the illusion that I'm kind of influencing something somewhere, I don't know, I'd be hesitant about greenlighting another young Han Solo movie, but if, for the sake of argument, they could do another movie just like this one, then I'd be all on board for that. And I'd be up for a young Lando Calrissian movie spin-off with Donald Glover. One of the things they didn't mess up continuity in this movie. Oh, well, unless I missed something. Let me know if I missed something. But as far as I could tell, they didn't mess up continuity in this movie. Now, when Luke meets Han for the first time in Star Wars A New Hope, Han does not believe in the Force. He's never seen it. And they did a really good job in this movie of not having any Force. So you can see that Han's seen all these things, but there's no Force. So when he meets Luke for the first time, that scene still works. But now I'm going to spoil some stuff here. The very last scene revealed Darth Maul is behind the whole thing. So if you do a sequel, if you do another one of these movies, you don't want Darth Maul actually getting too close to meeting Han Solo. You want to kind of keep him separate. If they can do that, yeah, I'd be on board for another movie. I think that's all I really have to say about this. I really enjoyed the movie. I was nervous about this one, but it turned out to be all right in the end. It was probably still a bad idea in the absolute sense, but it turned out to be a great movie. So yeah, I'll just finish here.